What academics call social change is a process lived by real human beings. Of the many Arambeperos who have befriended me and shared their knowledge, I have chosen four who have been affected by the force of change discussed in previous chapters. By considering in detail how the lives of a few actual people, have been altered, I hope to give concrete human meaning to this story of rapid change. All four are people I know well. I met Dora, Fernando, and Tomei in 1962. Dora cooked for members of the 1962 field team, Betty Wagley, David Epstein, field leader Marvin Harris, and myself. Fernando, captain and part owner of a sailboat, was the common-law husband of Dora's only full sister. Tomei had just returned from Rio de Janeiro, where he spent 7 years in commercial fishing. Soon after our arrival, this enterprising captain-owner invited us to a birthday party in his well-furnished brick house in Arambepe's northern rectangle. There we drank vermouth and listened to music on a small battery-operated phonograph, a rarity then in Arambepe. We saw a little more of Tomei during that first day, but I went out fishing with him in 1965, and we had long conversations in 1973 and in 1980. Dora washed clothes for us in 1964, 65, and 1980, and was our cook again in 1973. Fernando always enjoyed talking with us, but visited us most frequently in 1973, when we lived furthest from his house. He seemed to fancy himself our protector during our stay in the isolated area of summer homes to the south. Beginning a period of problem drinking that lasted until 1976, Fernando also enjoyed our ample stock of beer and Bacardi rum. I don't remember Alberto from '62, but he was to become my most trusted informant, best friend, and field assistant. I learned about Alberto from Niles Eldridge, a member of the 1963 field team, who had found him an excellent informant and suggested I look him up. Fostering my acquaintance with Alberto and our working relationship as anthropologist and informant was our employment of his younger sister as our cook in 1964. The woman from whom we rented a house that year insisted we hire this local woman who she trusted. Following a pattern he had established with Niles, Alberto visited us almost every night to converse and teach me about Arambepe, especially the fishing industry. None of these four, Alberto, Dora, Fernando, or Tomei, was a typical Arambepero since, as noted in Chapter 10, there's no such thing. One characteristic they shared is an attraction to outsiders. Witness their friendships with us. Although no single story can encapsulate the typical Arambepero's experience with change, these four personal histories will provide concrete illustrations of the impact of many forces on local life. Alberto's story, for example, samples the shift from fishing toward tourist industry and a more diversified economy. So does Fernando's, but with an added component of the new economy, the Tibras employment of one of his sons. Fernando's case also illustrates in extreme form villagers' hostility toward external forces. Dora's life between 1962 and 1980 shows the impact of male immigration on marital arrangements, the declining significance of the village prostitute label, and the continuing poverty of ordinary fishermen and their families. Perhaps most interesting, the case of Tomei, an unusually ambitious man, shows the importance of innovation and its rewards and pitfalls, the force of leveling mechanisms, and the continuing impediments to class mobility in northern Brazilian society. These contrasting stories also illustrate the wide range of personality variation, even in an egalitarian community such as traditional Arambepe. The anthropologist must pay attention to such personality contrasts. They influence choice of informants and personal relations in the field, and thus both the direction and the results of ethnographic research. The teacher. Born in 1923, Alberto is the oldest of the four villagers considered here. A native-born Arambepero, Alberto enjoyed the role of informant about his home community, particularly teaching Niles Eldridge and me about fishing. Alberto started fishing fairly later in life at the age of 24, after spending half a year in Salvador, where he worked successfully as a store clerk and domestic. Before going to the city, Alberto had done odd jobs in Arambepe. Once Alberto discovered that he disliked urban life, he decided to return to Arambepe and become a fisherman. He began fishing in the same crew as his father, an ordinary fisherman, but soon joined his godfather uncle, who owned a half share in a boat and was its captain. This man taught Alberto most of what he knew about fishing. Later, Alberto fished in more than a half dozen crews, sometimes with kinsmen, sometimes not. By 1973, he was fishing irregularly, spending more and more time on the store that Carolina, his common-law wife of 30 years, had started a few years earlier. Tired of fishing, Alberto was delighted to work as my field assistant between June and August 1973 for a regular wage. Alberto's story between 1965 and 1980 was one of improving but unspectacular fortune. His success, fitting Aaron Beppe tradition, came through innovation and luck. In 1980, Alberto said that his life had improved. Hasn't yours? He asked me. He attributed his success to electricity and especially to his refrigerator. Alberto and Carolina's household had been Aaron Beppe's third to install electricity, which permitted them to buy a refrigerator and eventually a freezer. Electric refrigerators, explained Alberto, are much more reliable than the old kerosene models that a few storekeepers had previously owned. Note the element of luck here. Old-time business people had invested in kerosene refrigerators before electricity arrived. They held on to their old models and did not immediately buy electric appliances. This created a niche for a shrewd business move by Alberto and Carolina. They sold the farm plot where they had invested profits from their store and used the cash to buy an electric refrigerator. Adding a freezer a year later, they became known for having the coldest drinks in Aaron Beppe, a valuable resource given the increased consumption of alcoholic beverages, especially beer, by villagers and outsiders alike. Electricity reached Aaron Beppe in 1976. Alberto and Carolina began buying 2 cases of beer, each containing 12 one-liter bottles for resale. By winter 1980, they were selling 100 liters per week, producing a profit of about $25, a figure that quadrupled in summer. Also contributing to their success was the paved highway, which permitted not just weekend and summer people, but beer and soft drink trucks to add Aaron Beppe to their delivery routes. The success of Alberto and Carolina thus rested on a combination of luck and business skills, enterprise foresight, opportunism, and hard work. Aaron Beperos did not bring electricity or the road to the village, nor did Alberto and Carolina have anything to do with the shift to larger boats that demanded a deeper harbor, necessitating the move of moorings to the south, which gave Alberto's house its valuable view. Still in the face of luck, they innovated opportunistically, converting a distant farm plot into a refrigerator, an at-home generator of income. Alberto and Ivan, his daughter's partner, convinced Carolina they should expand their house seaward and build a balcony where weekend tourists could drink their beer. Again, a strategic innovation led to success. Alberto's household continued plowing profits back into the business, adding the freezer, a stereo system in the balcony bar, and a second refrigerator when the first one broke down. Continued profits allowed Alberto and Carolina to pay a lot in Volta do Robalo and build a house on it, to buy a lot and build a house on it, which they were renting out in 1980. This house was registered in Carolina's name, but the Aaron Beppe home belonged to Alberto. Alberto and Carolina had been wise not to sell their house in seaside Aaron Beppe to outsiders, as many villagers had done. Along with the view, they had a good location for selling beer. The only nearby competition for beer sales was Aunt Dahlia's Bar, which specialized in juice, ice cream, and sales to hippies. Alberto and Carolina could sell both to locals and to weekenders who owned or rented houses in the street down there and in the new neighborhood just to the west. For those willing to wade through the lagoon in winter, Coronas was nearer to this part of Aaron Beppe than to the central and northern parts. The best ocean swimming areas were also closest to southern Aaron Beppe. The location of his bar and his reputation among outsiders for success and reliability had also brought Alberto the job of caring for a house across the street owned by a summer person from Salvador. This added about $35 per month to his income, while the summer person's well and electric pump gave Alberto's family ready access to clean water for washing dishes and bathing. For sales of vegetables and sundries, Carolina and Alberto had competition. One out of 3 homes in this part of Aaron Beppe sold something. The reselling of limes, onions, tomatoes, herbs, and other produce from the agricultural estates to the west had been Carolina's idea, but Alberto blamed her for not being more aggressive in meeting competition. He complained she had ignored his advice to buy more fruits and vegetables for resale. To illustrate her short-sightedness, Alberto told me that a man from Salvador had arrived, rented quarters across the street and a few doors north, and begun to sell cheaper fruits, vegetables, and sundries. Their produce sales had fallen off as a result. Alberto knew about the practice of first underselling to try to drive competitors out of the business and then raising prices, but he thought that his own Seaview and drink sales would shield them from this tactic. Still, he complained if Carolina had built up a larger sales volume years ago, they could have matched the newcomers' prices and kept their advantage. Alberto's story illustrates successful adaptation by individuals and a household to Arambepe's transformation from isolated fishing village to economically diverse suburban resort community. Alberto and Carolina's economic advance showed up in their lifestyle. A small house that in 1964 had been mostly wattle and daub was now all brick. Only one room had been plastered and painted when I first met Alberto, and his house had a dirt floor. Years of gradual improvement added up to much more comfortable quarters in 1980. A third bedroom and a toilet had been added, along with the seaward addition. All the inside rooms were plastered and newly painted. The floor was cement. The house was spick and span. Besides the refrigerator, freezer, and stereo, they owned an electric iron, a gas stove, and a black and white TV. This affluence posed a sharp contrast with 1964, when Carolina had cooked on a simple wood-burning grill and when they couldn't afford even the cheapest transistor radio. Along with their new lifestyle, Alberto's family seemed much more comfortable in their success than they had been in 1973. Carolina took part in candomblé less often than before. Their middle daughter, now a grown woman and regular candomblé participant, no longer got possessed by unwanted spirits.